Today, I'm bringing you a Spanish horror movie called The Orphanage. Laura grew up in an orphanage by the sea, where a bunch of kids played the game red light, green light every day with love. 30 years later, Laura returns to the orphanage with her husband, but ever since moving there, their 7-year-old son Simon has been acting strangely, constantly talking to invisible friends. Laura thinks Simon's behavior is to get their attention and doesn't think much of it. The following day, Laura escorts Simon to enjoy tea beside the ocean, where they come across a mysterious cave and Simon takes pleasure in gathering shells within. However, when Laura searches for him in the cave, she catches him talking to thin air once more. Simon recounts to his mother his encounter with a new buddy named Tomás. But as Laura scans the area, she finds only footprints without any trace of Tomás. The day after, an elderly woman inquires whether they're in need of a caretaker. Laura turns her down, yet come nighttime, an unusual sound rouses her, propelling her towards the storeroom where she meets the old lady, who then scrambles off in haste. Subsequently, peculiar events persist at their residence, with accumulations of shells materializing at their entryway, and Simon's invisible companions growing in number from 2 to 5, one donning a mask, leaving both Laura and her spouse perplexed, but they simply chalk it up to it's turning into a more grave fantasy. During a festivity, Laura attempts to coax Simon into mingling with the other youngsters, but he is preoccupied with wanting to show her Tomás's shack, resulting in a squabble, and Laura inadvertently striking Simon. Riddled with remorse, she proceeds to welcome the attendees. Post-entertaining the guests, Laura is met with the realization that Simon has vanished. He searched through all the rooms but couldn't find him. Then, a child wearing a hood appeared before him. Lola thought it was Simon and reached for his hood, but was suddenly pushed to the ground. Upon getting up, he frantically searched, but couldn't find Simon in any corner. At that point, he thought Simon might have gone to the cave at the beach, so he ran towards the shore, only to accidentally break his leg. As the tide was coming in, rescuers arrived at the cave to find nothing but the sudden misfortune. Lola Zhao was taken aback, and now the police were involved in the investigation, suspecting that Simon had been kidnapped. At that moment, Lola remembered the old woman who had broken into his house late at night, but even the police had investigated her and had not found any information on her yet. Returning home from the hospital, Lola was constantly troubled by his son's disappearance and often woke up at night, startled by strange noises, thinking Simon had returned, but found nothing in Simon's room time after time. Lola saw the old woman on the street, but the next second he was hit by a speeding car. Despite efforts to save him, he did not survive. Later, the police found a photo in the old woman's house, and Lola recognized at a glance. It was a group photo taken at the orphanage during his childhood. He could now clearly name every person in it. The police pointed to the woman with glasses in the photo, who turned out to be the old woman. Since she had worked at the orphanage only briefly, Lola was not familiar with her. This woman had a son named Thomas, who was disfigured and so always wore a hood. Later, his playmates took Thomas to the cave at the beach for fun and removed his hood. Without his hood, Thomas didn't dare to face people and stayed in the cave, where he eventually drowned when the tide came in. 6 months later, news of Thomas was still missing. Now that Lola has been found, his son has lost all hope, suspecting that it's the ghost of Thomas. Hauntings led to Simon's disappearance. At this moment, he remembered the old woman searching for something in the warehouse that night. He went to the warehouse, found bags of cement, and beneath them, the bodies of 5 dead children. Lola realized that the 5 children had died due to a prank on Thomas, and Thomas's mother, in rage, poisoned their food, killed them, and hid their bodies here. The next day, Lola set up the room to resemble their childhood at the orphanage. He aimed to lure the playful spirits of his childhood to help find Simon. He prayed at the dinner table, like in his youth, and started playing the wooden man game with his imaginary friends. Indeed, the game summoned the ghosts of his 5 dead playmates. Lola followed one spirit to the storage room downstairs, knocked on its walls, heard a hollow sound, peeled back steel pipes, and found a door. Opening it, Lola descended the steps. Recalling the basement, he saw a terrified Simon asleep on a small bed, Lola ran overjoyed, picked Simon up, and kept kissing him, wanting to take Simon away from this place. But he knew none of this was real, still hoping Simon would be by his side when he opened his eyes. Upon waking, all was dark again. Simon in his arms had vanished, and nearby on the ground lay a child with a hooded face. And then a memory struck him. Simon had once said he'd take him to see Thomas's cabin. Could this be Thomas's cabin? Moreover, when he was searching for Simon that day, he had even propped the fallen steel pipe back against the wall. Now near breaking point, Lola realized that the noises he heard at night were the sounds of Simon struggling to break down the door, not ghosts, as he had feared, slowly removing. In an ordinary moment, despair made him cry out in heart-wrenching pain. Yes, this child was Simon. It was unimaginable that he had killed him with his own hands. Unable to bear the outcome, Roland took a bottle of sleeping pills, choosing to stay and accompany Simon. Red Sky Education reminds us to care and pay attention to our own children, not to neglect them for other so-called important matters. The other matters are not so important. There is only one child, and it is also necessary to know their friends. At least if they are gone, we would know where they went. That's it for today's video. If you like Tom's Movie Talks, give a thumbs up, leave a comment, share, and see you next time.